Welcome everyone. We've made it to the last day of Google Cloud Next, and we are so fortunate to have you here with us today in what we anticipate to be a really engaging conversation. My name is Meng Zhou, and I lead strategic platform partnerships for Google Workspace. And so through the partnerships that we have, we strive to grow the Workspace ecosystem by working with industry-leading partners, and these partners create valuable solutions for our mutual customers. I'm here with you today as a panel moderator for this next session, Work Smarter, Collaboration and Productivity Tools to Help You Achieve More. And joining me today, I'm so excited to have our friends from our thriving partner ecosystem. We have Jana Beiswenger from Asana, Hayley Nelson from Logitech, and Montra Ellis from UKG. So Jana, let's go ahead and start with you. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your role at Asana.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. My name is Jana Beiswenger. I lead our business program management office at Asana. And for those of you who don't know what Asana is, we are a leading enterprise work management platform where we help companies of all sizes develop smarter ways to work. So I have about 15 years of experience in strategy, business operations, customer success, but what I would say really gets me excited is partnering with teams to drive impact within their organization. So focusing on organizational efficiency and getting to our end results and driving real impact. So I'm excited to dig in with everybody here.
Awesome, glad to have you here. And Hayley, if you could share a bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Hayley Nelson. I run the B2B marketing team at Logitech. You may know us for our mice and keyboards, but our team focuses on bringing video collaboration to market, along with partners like Google. We're really looking to bridge that gap between the at-home and remote team experience and make participation and collaboration better and easier for everyone. So excited for the conversation today.
Great, thank you, Hayley. And Montra, we'd love to hear a bit more about you.
Thank you. I'm also really happy to be here. My name is Montra Ellis. I work for UKG. I'm responsible for basically strategy insights and research. So basically what my team is responsible for at UKG, and if you're familiar with us, basically we're responsible for human capital management, workforce management. Most likely you either get paid by us or you clocked in somewhere using one of our tools. But my team basically looks at kind of the broader ecosystem of what's happening at that influx of HCM and workforce management. As that body changes, we're looking for those opportunities that we can look to really expand and grow. So in particular, that's one of the things we really love about our partnership with Google, is we're actually able to bring kind of those intersectional pieces of software that really kind of meet people where they live, so that we're really kind of helping to keep kind of those critical workers that we look to serve at top of mind.
Wonderful. So thanks so much, Jana, Hayley, Montra, for sharing more about you. We're so excited to have you here today, getting your insights all around collaboration, productivity, and really learning about how your organizations empower our customers to work smarter and better. So before we dive in today, I just wanted to recognize how incredible it is that we're actually all able to be here in person. It was actually 2019 since the last time we were together in Moscone. And of course, since then, 2020 was such a major inflection point for us and how we think about work. If you remember, it was virtually overnight that we basically became part of this global experiment in remote work. And so, as myself, as of many of you, we certainly pushed our productivity and collaboration tools to the limit. We worked across time zones, living rooms, continents, vacation rentals for some of us. And I think really through that experience, we started to understand that businesses are redefining what productivity means, what work means in this era of hybrid work. And so gradually, as we started heading back to the office and moving towards hybrid work, overall, we're starting to define this new meaning of productivity. And so, like many of your organizations, employees and teams everywhere now are really having these fresh and honest conversations about how we can succeed in this new future of work. And I think at the center of all of that is, of course, the two areas that we'll dive in deep today, which is productivity and collaboration. So again, some of the topics we'll discuss today are how does that look like in this era of distributed work? how do we meet our employees where they are, and how do we make sure that working works for everyone wherever they choose to work. And so at Google Workspace, we actually create tools and solutions that businesses can use to work more effectively and be more productive. But we also realize that we're not alone in this. And so according to a recent study by Productive, organizations are actually using about 130 different apps, and yours might be using even more. And a lot of these apps are part of our partner ecosystem. You'll see these span across productivity tools, verticalized solutions, hardware partners. Really the goal here of creating integrations with Workspace that make Workspace a best-in-class offering. So we're so thrilled to have such a robust and thriving partner ecosystem and to have representatives from UKG, Logitech, and Asana here with us today to really share their thoughts on the future of work. So let's go ahead and dive right into the panel. And the first question that I'd love to start with Jana is really just setting the stage here and understanding, what does productivity actually mean in the modern workplace? What are some of these levers that we're seeing organizations pull to really change what that means? And then even, how do we measure productivity? So Jana, would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, productivity is always top of mind for me and for us as an organization. And I think there's a lot that we could all do to really make strides and more of an impact on our customers, our teams, and all of ourselves individually. And like you said, the modern day workplace has changed so much. So it looks so different today than it did even 3 years ago. And you mentioned there's collaboration and productivity, and I see these two things going hand in hand. But I'll be direct. I actually think collaboration is pretty broken in today's modern workplace. So we did a recent study and found that employees report that they lose about 3 days just to sort of this work about work and busy work along the way. And this then causes them to lose up to 70% of their deadline. So that to me is like, this is broken, it's not working. And then when we dig into what are some root causes for that, there are 3 that always seem to bubble up for us. One is we're working off of siloed data. So everybody has different information from different places, and it feels really siloed, and it's hard to collaborate and make decisions effectively. The next is that our growing tech stack. So you showed that slide of, hey, and the stat of 130 different apps. While this feels like we're making life simpler, it's actually sometimes making it more complex. And then the third is a disconnected workforce. So as you're in this hybrid world, some employees are remote, some are in office, some are doing both at the same time, or not at the same time literally, but they're doing both. This also gets in the way. So when we think about how do you improve productivity and overall collaboration, if you just focus on those 3 things, you're going to really drive a big impact in your organization. And then the other thing to think about too is it's not just about productivity for the sake of productivity. We've also seen that this actually drives the bottom line for a business and has a huge impact. So our Anatomy of Work Index report, last time we ran it, we saw that companies that reported strong cross-functional collaboration saw 2x the revenue growth than companies who didn't. So to me, that is what we should all be striving for. It's about impact and not productivity for the sake of productivity, but how do we find these levers for growth and improving the way we collaborate?
Awesome, and 2 times revenue is nothing to balk at, so super impressive. I'm sure in addition to that measured statistic, there's additional untangible benefits such as increased employee satisfaction, greater cohesiveness. So Hayley, would also love to hear how you're seeing it, how you think about it.
Yeah, I agree with Jana that disconnected workforces is a big challenge. And I think I like to think about productivity as, how do we make a meaningful contribution? What kind of impact can we make? And I think, hybrid is rapidly evolving. Everyone's equation looks a little bit different. We're still very much experimenting. Certainly at Logitech, we're sort of our own living lab. And we've just reconfigured our office space in San Jose to be much more oriented towards being a place we can bring customers to see our products and collaboration spaces where we can come together as teams from time to time and really do great jam sessions. I think the main thing right now with hybrid is being really intentional about the kind of work we do in each space we work in. So really being intentional about designing workspaces. And I kind of see 3 buckets for me and my team. Certainly, we're a global distributed team, often working async. The first is really work from home. How are you really focused? And this might be more of a classic definition of productivity. What did I accomplish today? What did I check off the to-do list? And whether that was through one-on-ones or focused time, how was I using my time at home to be most effective? And then when you think about collaboration time in person, which now feels like such a treat to be able to go to the office occasionally, to meet with colleagues, I definitely want to be intentional about how I use my time in person. I don't need to be on, video meets at the office as much. I want to collaborate. I want to whiteboard. I want to brainstorm. The best use of time I had last week was taking a really long lunch with one of my direct reports who was in from Hawaii. The time we spent working through process and some of these interpersonal dynamics, that was really productive. And so you might say long lunch, is that really productive? I think in a hybrid world, yes, it's extremely productive, and we need those moments, and we have to be intentional about them. And then I think another learning that some of the companies that are doing hybrid the best have learned is just the importance of deep dive or immersive time together as teams, whether that's an on-site or an off-site. How do you structure time that's really about building trust? Because teams are much more innovative when they trust each other, they know each other. So on-sites and off-sites, great times to really workshop how we work together, how we can be more productive as a team, having fun together, really celebrating work. So again, being really intentional about how we use that time and thinking about each of these different modalities in different ways to be the most productive we can be in each of them.
Great. Thank you, Hayley, for helping us understand all the different places employees might choose to work and where we can equip them to be most effective. So, Montra, would love to kind of close with you and sort of your thoughts around what productivity means.
It's really interesting because we kind of think about productivity, especially, and I'm really focusing kind of on the frontline worker here, and those essential workers that we really said were really important to us during the pandemic. And, unfortunately, I agree with all of what you said, but for those workers in particular, we still see productivity in a very traditional sense. This idea that I go in, I work, and I produce X widget for X time. And we basically rinse and repeat and move through that. But in the world we live in today, we really can't think of productivity just in those lines. As we start to think about how we enable and empower frontline workers, the truth is that's one of the keys. So as we look at how technology plays in with this myriad of apps that are part of their lives, a lot of those don't actually make their lives easier. It actually makes it more complicated. So we really have to figure out how we bring all those things together and actually produce tools that allow them to make decisions in the moment, right? And make collective decisions for your customers, for other coworkers as well. So when we think about the fact that right now, according to HBR, 87% of businesses believe that if we gave people the tools and empowerment and autonomy to make decisions in the moment that move business forward, especially for frontline workers, that would actually provide a 2x, 3x return for an organization. But only about 20% of businesses actually do that. So I really see kind of taking that ability of empowering people, providing them with the tools in the moment, being able to answer the questions they need at that moment, and being able to actually be part of that virtual cycle. That's the most important piece to really take productivity to the next level, because quite frankly, productivity for human beings is kind of tapped out. Right?
Excellent. So thank you, Montre, for helping us illustrate that there's just a variety of different types of mutual customers that we serve, and really that we need to meet the needs of not just knowledge workers, but also our frontline workers. So these are really great points. They're helping us understand what productivity and collaboration means in this changing modern workplace. So thank you so much for helping us set that baseline understanding. Now, I want to move on to actually discussing how the tools that our organizations have address this move to asynchronous work environments. So how can we meet workers where they work, when they work, how they choose to work, and then how do these tools help us bridge the gap between remote and in-person work? And then also really important to Google, and a core tenet even here at Cloud Next, is the ability to promote inclusivity, equity via our tools. So I'd love to hear from our panelists, how are we thinking about meeting the diversity of workers and users that we serve? So Montra, I'd actually love to start with you here.
When we think about the pandemic in particular, we've all talked about it and how it really was this transformative moment. We'd already been moving towards a hybrid work, remote, whether people realized it or not. The pandemic basically accelerated that and forced us to it. And we basically created this environment where people could do the work they needed to do at home or in some type of hybrid work. And we could also do that with some frontline workers as well. The interesting thing that brought to bear is it also opened up and kind of erased some inequity or feelings of inequity for traditionally marginalized groups. They enjoy that factor of working remotely. And now all of a sudden everybody's saying, we have to come back into the office, or we have to be more present. And now the thing is, for people who do not want to do that, we end up with another bias, which is that proximity bias. And even though technically there's probably not that much difference in terms of when we start to talk about productivity between people who work remotely and people who work in the office, there is a perception of managers, something like 70% of managers don't believe that remote workers are actually indispensable, or they feel like they're more dispensable. So they're more likely to, when they're thinking about doing layoffs and so on and so forth, looking to those in-person workers. I think a big chunk that we have to do to kind of get over this is really how we think about educating not just the kind of workers themselves, but also that mid-level frontline manager, about how do you provide them, going back to the idea of provide them with the tools and the moment to make good decisions or to enable and help their workers in that moment. So think about these tools that really kind of nudge them around kind of fairness and opportunity. You want to think about these tools that offer the ability to provide equity to shifts instead of people basically who fit a particular dynamic, basically always getting the really good shifts. So basically thinking about how do we move people forward with the actual outcomes of their job, as opposed to just filling them time, through and through with I have to get X widget done by X time.
Great, thanks so much, Montre, and thanks so much for also illustrating that a lot of this process is just helping educate our managers, these companies, as we shift to this new modern workplace, sort of how this is changing. So Hayley, would love to turn it over to you and really understand at Logitech how you guys are addressing this.
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of time thinking about how we bridge the gap between remote and in-person, and I think at the core, it's really about meeting equity and meeting culture. And really enabling full participation, right? And I think there's two components to that. One is sort of team dynamics and how we work, and then the other is making sure that you have the right technology and tools. So when it comes to team dynamics, it's really about, how do we empower people to participate? How do we make sure that they feel like they can really contribute, they can be seen and heard? Some of this can be done through things like team agreements or team charters, where we're really explicit about how we want to treat each other, how we want to show up for each other, and the boundaries we want to put in place, especially with remote work. Work flows into every part of your life and every hour of the day, so boundaries are really important. And so a team's commitment to respecting those boundaries creates a really healthy kind of collaboration culture. And then, of course, for us, the crucial piece is the technology. And we did a survey last fall. We talked to about 3,000 participants and really found that audio and video provisioning has not kept up with a hybrid as it continues to evolve. People reported that they were still propping up laptops on books at home. They were suffering, neck pain, wrist pain. They don't have the right ergonomic keyboards and mice. and they just weren't set up for success. And so, we spend a lot of time working with IT leaders to make sure that they are provisioning workers at home with the right types of headsets. I know I'm working at home. I have construction next to me right now. And we've got this great new headset that has noise canceling, and I am so into it because it's totally working for me to block out that construction and to continue to effectively lead my team. So, work from home setup, really crucial that we don't ignore that. And then on the other side of the screen in the office, that's where we're really focused on making sure that people at home can have an equal seat at the table. And so our latest development is called Logitech Sight. It's an AI-powered tabletop camera that really frames the participants in the room so that they can all be seen by the folks who are at home. Because you all know the experience of dialing into a Google Meet, and in the furthest back corner of the conference room, some important leader is saying something, and you're at home and you can't hear, and you're missing important information. Or a colleague leans over another and blocks a view, or you can't see the whiteboard. So we have a fantastic whiteboarding tool that actually blocks the presenter who's working on the whiteboard so that remote participants can see really clearly the content on the whiteboard. So these are the types of tools that you really need so that folks on these remote and hybrid teams can feel really empowered with the information they need. They're not missing a beat, and meetings can flow seamlessly, and collaboration can yield the kind of innovation that we are all looking for.
Great, and yes, thanks Hayley so much for flagging that. It's really the combination and the seamless integration between these software solutions and hardware tools that really bring these meeting experiences to life. So Jana, would love to end with you and sort of get your perspective on how Asana is enabling productivity.
I love what you just said, Hayley. I feel like I'm the person when I'm working from home and there's a big group meeting, I pin that one and I zoom in. I'm like, who's talking? What is the facial expression? Okay, I got it. And I think we've all been there before. So I would also say, if I take a step back, another way to ensure people are giving their full body participation is making sure that they have the context that they need, that their work is visible, and they're involved in the important conversations. I think that, in a nutshell, is what we're all striving to do in all of these different environments. Hayley touched on meeting culture and meeting norms, but I think it's just as important to talk about and recognize the importance of asynchronous culture and asynchronous collaboration too. So Asana and Google Workspace, we're companies that really help enable that, meeting customers or meeting employees where they are along the way. And I mentioned Google Workspace because, as we talked about before, the growing tech stack can make life more complicated versus simpler. And so instead of just thinking about what are all the apps that we should be using, think really thoughtfully about what are the integrations of the apps that we have to build more effective asynchronous work. So I'll give 2 examples of how Google and Asana partner to build out this type of, different types of integrations that meet employees where they are. So one is our integration with Google Docs. So a lot of times collaboration happens in a Google Doc. You're riffing on, this entire panel, right? What are we going to talk about? What are the questions we're going to answer? And then in Asana, I'm partnering with my marketing team to say, okay, great, what are the logistics, coordinating all the different pieces. So the integration allows us to use the Smart Chip feature that Google has to pull information and context directly from Asana into the place where we're working together. Another example is through automation. So thinking about how do integrations unlock your process and workflows to move better and faster together. So our partnership and integration with Google, Gmail, GCal, and Asana allows you to build rules and automation so that when you have a deadline coming up, you can automatically detect and see and then make sure you have scheduled time to get that work done on time. So all of this is to say, asynchronous work is just as important as that live meeting time to build more effective communication or collaboration along the way. I'd also argue it's more effective at driving, inclusion and equity too, if done thoughtfully. So reducing the proximity bias, right? Anybody can do anything, anytime in an asynchronous environment as long as you have the right norm set up. And you also literally knock down the physical barriers. I don't have a floor to climb, I don't have somebody's door to knock on, and I don't have to worry about the safety of feeling like I'm comfortable raising my hand, whether it be in person or virtually as well. So I encourage everybody here just to think really thoughtfully about asynchronous work and how that also unlocks just better collaboration overall.
Great. Thank you so much, Yana, for also flagging these amazing integrations that Workspace and Asana have together. And really, ultimately, the goal here is to allow users just to remain in the flow of work, be able to do their job without having to switch context. So thank you for sharing that. To wrap up, I think we want to end with a topic that is top of mind for everyone, and that's, of course, generative AI. So on Tuesday, we were really excited to announce the expansion of Duet AI, which is the generative AI functionality within Google Workspace. Duet really helps our customers be able to create content, generate insights, and it's really meant to be helpful and assistive. So closing on that topic about how are we thinking about AI, how are we thinking about that in the context of productivity and utilizing AI as a helpful tool to supercharge productivity, we'd love to also understand, what is the human impact perspective here? How are we really thinking critically about how we bring AI into our tools? So to kick us off on that, Yana, I'd love to start with your thoughts.
Yeah, I think AI has a ton of potential to really change the way we work, both long-term and almost immediately. And I think it's beyond just the really obvious applications like content creation. But I want to also recognize the path forward is not easy. It's sort of like all this is changing so quick, you're like, great, this is going to be the silver bullet for the problem I have. But as we have been developing our own AI solutions and talking to customers, the thing that's become super apparent to us is that there is a real gap, specifically a work data gap. And what I mean by that is it's the real-time data that is really tied to productivity. So real-time data around what is the work that's getting done, by whom, by when, how is information flowing, where is information flowing, and how do we actually sort of move forward in our processes to go from strategy to plan to delivery along the way. And I'll give a really practical example just to bring it to life of somebody who thinks about this and how it might impact their life. So I lead our program management office, which means we're leading strategic initiatives that drive transformational change for our organization. It requires me to make sure I am escalating risk, opportunities, making sure there's seamless flow of information, and most importantly, escalating when needed to make sure that we're focused on executing on the strategy and making the critical business decisions we need to make with high confidence and done fast so we can remain agile. The hardest part of my job is synthesizing all that information. You've heard the metaphor, we're herding lots of cats, right? That's a lot of my job. Where's all this information? Cipher through it all. What do I need to escalate? What are the decisions we need to make? How do we make sure we're making the right progress on this? Now, where AI comes in is imagine a world where all of this data was clean and connected, and I could use that to sort of synthesize for me so that I can stay in the strategy layer and I can stay sort of abreast of what are the decisions we need to make versus in the weeds of what's all the information that's going around. So we recently launched or announced Asana Intelligence, which is our human-centered approach to AI. And two features that I am personally really excited about is there's something called health checks, which effectively is leveraging your data, your work data to see, oh, what are the initiatives and projects that are on track or not on track, but leveraging AI to sort of signal that to you. And then the second is this Ask Asana Anything. So let's say I want to do a double click. Great, something's off track. Okay, Asana, tell me what is the blocker? What is the information that's not being passed? Who do I need to escalate? Being able to ask Asana and leverage AI to help uncover those key insights in real time for me along the way. And so I think there's a recent study that went out that said that I think IT leaders are saying AI is the number one, 50% of IT leaders said AI is the number one thing they're focused on. And so if any of you in this audience are thinking about it as well, and how to make it a competitive advantage for you, what's really going to be important is not how many AI add-ons are you using, it's the quality of data that you're using to feed that AI. And so that's what I encourage everybody to think about is how do we create high quality data? And then the last thing I'm going to say, because I think with opportunity comes a lot of risk, and AI in particular is a bit scary. We're in uncharted territory in terms of the changes happening so fast, and it's really hard to anticipate what are the potential consequences that are around the bend for us. So as we are developing our own AI solutions, we use 5 guiding principles in everything that we do. So the first is AI should be helping people achieve their goals. At the end of the day, it's for people and for the workers themselves. The second is, as we design AI, we're designing it for humans and AI. We don't just think about the AI. It's humans at the center, and then how does AI help? And then the third is, we want to make sure people are accountable for the decisions. Think of AI as the suggestion layer. It's the recommendation layer, but at the end of the day, the outcomes that you're driving need to be accountable to the people who are making the decisions themselves. And then the final 2, I would just say, are, for us, are a bit table stakes. It's safety always, and then transparency in practice and in our product as well. And so I'm sharing that because I know with AI, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of anxiety, but for us, as we have sort of charted through this territory, keeping all of those core principles in mind really have helped us make decisions along the should we do this or should we do the other thing? And taking that human-centered approach, I think, has helped us all sort of remain intact with some shared responsibility around the ethics of AI along the way.
Yes, absolutely, Yana. I love how you put it, the human-centered approach, and I think very similar to how we're thinking about it at Google Workspace. It's really placing that user in the driver's seat and letting them determine when AI gets invoked, when we use AI, and to what extent. So Montra, I'd love to turn it over to you and kind of understand from you how UKG is seeing this.
So definitely, one of the things is we know this is the future. This is the now when we think about how we use AI. But one of the things that happens, and I think Yana kind of speaks to it a little bit around, we often talk about it almost if it's diametrically opposed to human beings. But really, this is about the unity of people and technology, and we need to not think about AI as a replacement for human beings, but really when we get to that really interesting augmentation of human beings. And so I think when we think about some of those models, I think it does induce fear. It particularly induces fear kind of at the, in the frontline worker layer. And really for us now, we are looking at kind of traditional white collar workers are actually experiencing that fear of what happens, say, and around kind of replacing our jobs. So I think one thing is that for the most part, only 41% of most frontline workers and essential workers are excited about AI, compared to almost double their managers and the executives. So that means there's something broken in the messaging. Some part of it is when we roll out this new technology, often we do it with no context. So we don't explain why this is beneficial. So people often have this inherent fear. People fear change. They fear what they don't truly understand. So I think that we have a requirement to really, as we roll these things out, really explain what they do. And kind of what we think about from our perspective is we want to bring, from a UKG perspective, is how do we make people's lives easier? Do we give them a little bit of time left? Do we make a little bit of time back? So instead of walking across the warehouse floor from one end to the other, can I make it easier for you to punch in, transfer, or all of those things so you don't have to wait in line, so that you can actually get an extra 5 minutes where you call your child or you talk to your friend. And those things that we're able to give back to people's lives, those are the most important things. So we're really trying to leverage our relationship with Google as we think about those integrations that we bring to bear. So there's simple things about how you request PTO, how do I not have to roll into that kind of spiral of anxiety if I'm an introvert about I had to get somebody to replace my shift. We're also able to bring in kind of those AI models and technology that really kind of looks to make sure that when I do ask for a shift swap, I'm actually getting the people that have the skills, the capabilities. And we also look at kind of the recency index, so we don't actually want to put somebody in the position who had that skill, but they haven't used that skill in 3 years. So we're really kind of engaging in those types of models to make sure that we basically give something back to people so that they walk away thinking that AI is really helping and enabling them, not a deterrent.
Absolutely, and I love how you put it so eloquently that, we're really looking at AI as something to help us with the chores that we do, the tasks that we just don't want to actually have to do and put aside, and really how AI can help us focus on the things that really matter. So, Hayley, to close us off, would love to understand how you're seeing this from the views of Logitech.
Yeah. I love what both of you said. Jana, I hope those guiding principles are somewhere on a blog post from Asana out there that we can grab. And Montra, I think, in the similar vein, I think AI is an important ingredient in our technology, but really for the aim of creating better human experiences. And we're trying to leverage AI to make the remote experience as good or even better than being there in person when it comes to remote and hybrid meetings. Because really it's about enabling all the participants on teams to have all the information they need. So if they can't be in the room, making sure that all the information and transparency is there so that teams can really make the best decisions and collaborate effectively. So I think, during the pandemic, when we were all at home, there was some sort of equity in that we all had equal squares on the screen. And certainly now that we're back to a hybrid situation, we're faced with meetings that are suboptimal, where you really can't see and hear everyone in the room. And so our new AI camera site really leverages the power of AI to detect and accurately frame participants in the room. So it has this sort of adaptive intelligence that chooses the best camera of the moment, whether it's the front of room camera or the tabletop camera, to follow the conversation between participants so that folks at home can follow it and easily jump in and participate. And so I think that's sort of where we're leveraging AI for these goals we have around meeting equity. If you think of a Hollywood director is picking the best views and editing those for you. And that's exactly what AI does for us with Logitech site. It brings those best views together. I think we're also working with partners like Google to use, Hey Google, hands-free voice prompts so that people can walk into a room, use the voice prompt to join a video meeting, to end a meeting, to use, make a dial-up call. So these are just the ways that AI has become a part of our solutions and are really, it's really just a crucial ingredient in helping us create the best and most effective collaboration experiences.
Absolutely. So thank you so much to Jana, Hayley, Montra for bringing us through this entire journey of how we're shifting what we're defining as productivity and collaboration in the modern workplace, sharing how you're thinking about it from your respective companies, and also closing us out on how Gen AI is going to shape this in the future.